Hi everyone, it is March 5th, 2026 and welcome to this month's A&D Medical's live Q&A. My name is Abraham. I'm an advanced clinical practitioner pharmacist and the lead of the YouTube channel here at A&D Medical, where we create science-backed health content focused on cardiovascular health. We talk about everything blood pressure and everything health and well-being. So it's great to see you all here. We go live every first Thursday of the month, so mark it in your calendars. We're going to dive deep into your questions. And by the way, today we have a special guest. We had a special guest last month, and we've got a special guest today, certified physician assistant Melody, who practices in family medicine in California in the United States. So hopefully, if technology works, I'm going to add Melody to our call today. And there we are. Hello, Melody. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much. Hi, guys. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Melody, before I actually start, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself to our viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. So Abraham did a great job. I am a physician assistant from California. I'm certified there. I've been working in family medicine and I deal with blood pressure on a daily basis. I treat patients with hypertension all the time. So I think this is a great opportunity to talk about it. I'm really glad to be invited right now.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show. Usually the live shows that we do on the A&D Medical channel is run by myself, but as of last month and this month, we've had special guests on the show. Last month, I don't know if you saw the episode, we had Adam Huddle, who is our director of engineering at A&D Medical. So it was really good to have one of the engineers on to discuss some really complicated stuff about blood pressure. I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. All the questions I answer, well, me and Melody are going to answer in this episode, have been submitted by viewers like yourselves that are watching. The comments come from our videos, our social media. So if you have any questions about blood pressure, heart health, anything else that you want us to cover, just drop a comment whilst we're live. If we have time, because we've got a lot of questions to answer, but if we have time, we will do our best to answer it in this episode. But if we don't, please don't worry. All of the questions get written down and we'll answer it in next month's episode. So it's every first Thursday of the month. And if you're watching this after it's gone live, or if you're watching any of our other videos, if you just leave a comment, a question there, we will answer it in the live show. I'm just going to quickly look at the comments. So as we're speaking, Melody, as I show these comments, it's going to block you a little bit. So I apologize. So first comment, love your content from AZK9987. Thank you so much. Camille, I'm sorry, Camille. It's a hard name to pronounce, but Camille Kikowski, the crossover. I think the crossover of how we transitioned you in, it must have been perfect. D Henderson, 2007. Happy Monday. Happy Monday to you, D. Thank you very much for tuning in. And Tarafdar, Bappy, interesting. Well, thank you very much. So we've got a lot of viewers live at the moment watching us. Everything looks good. So let's begin. So the first comment is from Flame of the West 6196. Question: when a nurse uses the stethoscope and the cuff, my BP is around 126/74, but when taken with just the automatic blood pressure cuff, it's always 10 points higher. This happened on 3 different occasions with my GP. I'm fit, I exercise, I eat right. So does anyone know which method is more accurate? And by the way, this is from a video where we're discussing how to use your blood pressure monitor, your automated blood pressure monitor. So over to you, Melody, on this one, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I think this question is really great because we can really dive into a lot of different topics under the blood pressure category. So I think this is fantastic. So as far as blood pressure, let's start off with the basics. We've got manual blood pressures and then we've got automated blood pressure. So a manual blood pressure reading would be involving a stethoscope, a sphygmometer, and a inflatable cuff. Now, someone else would typically do that manual blood pressure reading, and I wouldn't recommend anyone to try doing a manual blood pressure reading on themselves. That would be inaccurate. So don't try that out. But otherwise, another person would be doing the reading, and they rely on sound to get your blood pressure reading. Now, versus the automated blood pressure reading is completely electronic, and then on top of it, it relies on vibrations. So now going back to this person's question, a 5 to 10 point difference, that can be accounted for in a lot of ways by different life factors. So it can be relatively normal for the automated blood pressure machine to be a little bit higher. So to ensure that your blood pressure reading is completely accurate, or as accurate as it can be, you want to ensure that you are doing things to prep for the blood pressure reading. So first off, you want to make sure that you're not tense. So you want a relaxed arm to be set onto a table nearby where it keeps your arm at relatively heart level.
Mhm.
And then on top of that, you want to make sure you're seated upright like I am right now, with your back supported, feet both on the ground. And you're not talking, you're not eating, you're not drinking. This helps ensure that you get accurate results. On top of that, you want to ensure that um, sorry, my brain blanked for a sec.
Okay. But that talking point as well that you mentioned, it's quite a difficult one as well, because I've been in that situation so many times with patients, and I think it's always a bit uncomfortable for them when you're taking their blood pressure, and then they tend to then talk to you.
Yeah.
In your mind, you're like, "Oh, please stop talking," because like it's going to affect your reading.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's so many times where no one enjoys the awkward silence, and so they wanna fill in the void, but
Yeah.
ultimately it does, affect the blood pressure reading, so you don't wanna do that. Oh, the last thing I was gonna mention was temperature. So, like, ultimately, you don't really think about it, but if you are feeling cold in the room, that actually tenses up your body, and that can affect blood pressure as well. So, ideally, if you are in kind of a relatively, like, warmer but not hot room, that would be ideal. But again, some doctor's offices aren't that built that way. So, as far as those factors, they can increase your, blood pressure reading. On top of that, I would say, manual readings, can also be inaccurate in the sense that the person reading it can round the number. So they can either round down or round up just to
Yeah.
make it easier for themselves, or they could deflate the cuff too quickly, and that can affect the blood pressure readings as well. So ultimately, what is the right way to go about it? Well, I tell my patients all the time to get a validated blood pressure monitor, take that home every day for the next 5 to 7 days. I want them to regularly take their blood pressure at the same time every day. So, what I tell them is either morning and night, or sometimes I'll even say morning, afternoon, and night. You do that for 5 to 7 days, write down those readings. And then, in about a week's time, you come back, we review those blood pressure readings together, average them out, and that final number will show me where your blood pressure actually lies, whether you are actually suffering from hypertension or if you have a normal blood pressure. And then we can go over lifestyle factors that can be changed, or maybe start medicine from there.
No, absolutely. I 100% agree with you on that. And thank you for that
Yeah.
wonderful explanation. I always see a 5 to 10 millimeter mercury difference between automated and manual spig. And like you said, I didn't think of that before, but a lot of clinicians, obviously, they're working with sound. They're waiting until they don't hear the sound anymore. So, it's very difficult to actually pinpoint it exactly when you stop hearing the sound to actually make that blood pressure reading. But also, it is actually written directly in the European Society of Hypertension and the American Heart Association guidelines as well about this key difference as well. So it's nothing unknown. And I think, like Melody very nicely said, I don't think any clinician's ever going to go off one reading in terms of making clinical decisions in terms of treatment or diagnosing hypertension. They're always going to want 7 day of home blood pressure readings, at a minimum, really, to actually then decide, all right, well, what am I going to do next? Are we going to start treatment? Are we going to diagnose hypertension? So that's probably the most important thing. All right, perfect. We are doing good. Right, let's go on to the next question then, Melody. This is from username at SoFunny37. And the question is, can we talk about doctors who don't measure the arm? And just to give you a bit of context behind this, this is from our video on how to actually wear a blood pressure cuff. We go through it in a lot of detail about actually measuring your arm circumference, making sure it fits properly, making sure the size and tightness and the placement is all correct. So we go through it in a lot of detail because it's probably one of the most common errors that I see in practice. So their question is that, can you talk about why doctors don't measure the arm? Because you don't really see that in practice, ever someone, a clinician measuring a patient's arm.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it is kind of something that's not really talked about, but it is important. At the end of the day, someone like myself, I've been trained to take blood pressures, and usually in at least my practice, we have medical assistants who take blood pressures as well. They've been equally trained to take blood pressure readings. And so we kind of get an idea of what cuff fits what person's arms. Now, if a patient wanted to ensure that they have the absolute correct cuff size and they don't even know what their arm circumference is and they want to go purchase maybe the correct cuff size, they can always come in and ask me or a medical assistant or whoever their doctor's office, wherever they are. They can ask them directly and say, hey, can you measure that out? We usually have some measuring tape in our office to where we can give them that information. And it helps them be in charge of their health. I think patients should always advocate for learning more and understanding what's going on in a better way. But otherwise, cuff size is incredibly important. If the cuff is too large, it can affect the blood pressure. It might give you a lower reading than what your actual blood pressure is, versus if the cuff is too tight, then it might create a higher number when really your blood pressure is normal. So it is super important to know what cuff fits you.
Wonderful. Perfectly put, actually. I can't agree more. Honestly, I am very similar to you in that case. I don't think it's been very rare actually that I've measured a patient's arm. You get a feel for it, whether to use the large cuff, the extra large cuff. So you do get a feel for it in practice. But I agree as well from the user that, our subscriber is that, yeah, if you think, is that cuff the right size for me? Just ask. I don't think any clinician is going to be upset about, measuring your arm and making sure it's correct, because it's essential that we get it accurate.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful. So we've got a comment here, actually. Sorry to interrupt the flow, Melody, but we've got a comment from D. Henderson. Sorry, it's blocking you again, but okay. I've read that music can have an impact on blood pressure. Is that true? Do you know what's interesting? I actually recently, I'll just take this down so that we can see yourself, Melody. But I actually recently read something about this study that was done where patients listened to Mozart. Ooh. And it actually, classical music and Mozart, and it actually did show some improvement in blood pressure, but I don't think it was like statistically significant to actually make a claim. But it's an interesting one and I guess it does make sense as well. I guess if you're listening to very calming music, I guess it's going to calm you and your blood pressure might improve as well. So it's definitely one to look into more, and I guess watch that space really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. So I'm just going to move on to the next question, Melody, because we've got a lot to go through in very little time, and I know that you've come and joined us. So let's go on to the next question. So Megan Kleckner 2949. The question is, can other brands of cuffs work with the A&D Medical monitors? If it's okay with you, Melody, I'm going to take this one because I think it's a wonderful question.
Yeah.
And I actually had to get expert advice from Adam Huddle, who was on last month's episode. Like I said, Adam's our Director of Engineering and Regulatory at A&D Medical in the USA. And many of you saw him last month. So I asked Adam about this. And what he said is, in theory, some third-party cuffs can physically connect to an A&D Medical blood pressure monitor. So if they use the same ISO connector, so just for me to show you, it's just so well built. But this is the ISO connector, basically. So if it shares the same ISO connector, technically it can fit the A&D Medical blood pressure monitor. However, what Adam said very clearly is that doesn't mean that the reading will be accurate. You see, every A&D Medical monitor is clinically validated as a complete system. So that means the device and the specific cuff, they're tested together as a unit. So the moment you attach a different cuff, so let me just hold this so it's more clearer. So this was obviously tested as a unit together, but the moment you attach a different cuff, well, then we can't really guarantee the accuracy of that measurement. And with blood pressure, accuracy is everything. And that's exactly what we've been speaking about in today's video, in all our videos. So Adam, our Director of Engineering, strongly recommends, and the A&D Medical official guidance is, use the cuff model that was validated with your specific device. That's the only way to ensure that you're going to get medically accurate readings and your monitor was designed to provide, really. So if anyone wants more information on how to wear your blood pressure cuff, the placement, the size, measuring your arm, everything like that, we'll leave a link in this video. So definitely go and give it a watch. Perfect. So how are we doing here? We're doing good at the moment. D. Henderson, thank you very much for all your comments, by the way. I don't know if you can see it on your end, Melody, but it's just asking a few questions, but we're going to try our best to come back to these questions.
Okay.
One actually is about vaping. So sorry, Melody, it's blocking you again. I've heard others say vaping is safer than smoking for heart health. Does vaping really have more or less impact on heart health than smoking? That's a very interesting one, actually. I'm not particularly sure about heart health. However, I do know that like the NHS, for example, and certain medical regulatory frameworks do recommend vaping over smoking cigarettes, especially when you're trying to quit smoking. So as a means to quit smoking, vaping is far safer than smoking cigarettes. However, the effect on the heart is one that I've got to read up about a bit to see if there's any more evidence, because I did look up this a couple of years ago, but vaping is relatively new still, so there's more research coming on it. So I will look into it in more detail and get back to you in next month's episode, unless you know anything, Melody, that you can add to that.
I mean, ultimately, I would say none of them ideal, but yeah, I think vaping probably has a little bit less harmful effects on the heart specifically, but I would say ultimately both of them cause significant damage. So
Definitely.
if there's a way to avoid both, then I would.
Absolutely, yeah. Perfect. So moving on to the next comment. This is from Peter Paper. Hey, I've been dreading going to the doctors. It's been around 2 years since I've been, and I need to get a physical. I have high blood pressure, and I'm nervous about getting it checked at the doctors. What are your coping skills of not being afraid of getting your blood pressure checked? Any advice? Thank you. That's a very good question, actually. Thank you very much, Peter Paper. I'll go first, if that's okay, Melody, on this one. I feel like I've thrown quite a lot of comments at you right at the start.
It's all right. Go for it.
So I think that's a very common feeling, and you're definitely not alone. A lot of people get anxious before a checkup, and that anxiety can obviously temporarily increase your blood pressure, so it's higher. It's completely normal. One of the best strategies to take control of the numbers is at home before you go in. And we actually spoke a little about this, me and Melody, earlier. So your doctor, your medical provider, they're actually going to prefer to see a full week's worth of home readings on your home blood pressure monitor rather than a single one time blood pressure take that they've done in clinic. So what I recommend that you do is, if you know you've got your physical or your appointment and you know your blood pressure generally goes up when you go in, start taking home readings. Take home blood pressure readings, 2 or 3 readings in the morning, 2 or 3 readings in the evening at the same time, preferably, and do that for 7 days. Remember, like Melody said earlier, sit comfortably, rest for a minute, keep your arms supported, feet flat on the floor, and use the same technique. Of course, watch our video on the channel. We go through this in a lot of detail on how to take your blood pressure properly and accurately. But then log those readings in, you can write them on paper or log them on an app, because we are in 2026, and A&D, we have the A&D Heart Track app. It's a completely free app. I love using it. You can download it on the app on your Apple iPhone store or your Google Android store, and it automatically then averages your readings. It shows them in a really friendly way as well. You can share them to your medical provider, so it makes your medical provider's life a lot easier as well, and bring those to your appointment basically. And seeing your 7-day average gives your doctor a much clearer picture of your real blood pressure, right? Because in clinic, it's probably going to be a bit higher. Like we said, you're a bit anxious, like you said in your comment as well. But seeing that 7-day home blood pressure reading gives us a far better outlook of what your blood pressure is really like.
Yeah.
And another few coping skills as well is, just thinking of it like before arriving, try and give yourself plenty of time, so you're not rushing from the car. Get there a bit earlier, sit there quietly for a few minutes, do some breathing techniques, just breathe normally before you get in, relax your shoulders, just try and relax as much as you can. But it's completely okay to tell your doctor, your nurse, your medical provider that you're feeling anxious. Most people do, and it usually gives them time to calm down. Melody, any tips as well from you on that? Is that something you've experienced in practice?
Absolutely. I've come across a lot of people who suffer from white coat hypertension. And most of the time, I give the patients a little bit of time to sit in the room, get acquainted with their surroundings, so that way they can kind of ease in. I always say, find your Zen place, your happy place, before we get the blood pressure reading, and because they know that this is going to happen. But otherwise, you brought up a great point earlier about music maybe affecting blood pressure, and I feel like there have been times where I've had patients listen to music when I'm doing something, so that way it kind of eases their anxiety. So that might be a great option for people who have a little bit of anxiety with getting their blood pressure taken as well.
No, that's perfect. I totally agree. So the music one is definitely a good one to look into more as well. And
Yeah.
just one other point as well, we have got videos on the channel as well. One especially quite dedicated to this, and it's where we discuss why blood pressure readings are usually different in your doctor's office versus at home, and also how to take accurate readings as well. So we will link them in this video at the end. And if you can't, or if you don't have time, just go straight on our channel and find it from there. Perfect. So we're doing good. We've still got another comment to go through. So I'm just going to move on to the next one, Melody, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
So this is from Trevor Anderson. And the question is, do our bodies know it's 5 or 8 a.m.? So again, just to give a bit of context, this is from a video where I explained that blood pressure is usually naturally higher in the morning compared to the evening. So obviously Trevor's asking, how do our bodies know then it's 5 or 8 a.m.? Melody, if it's okay with you, I'll send this one to you.
Yeah, no, that's great. I would say the simple answer is yes. Your body really does actually know when it's morning. We have an internal 24-hour clock in our body called the circadian rhythm. It's run by a part of the brain that works kind of like a built-in timekeeper, responding to light, sleep, your daily routine. It starts about right around 5 to 8 a.m. That internal clock becomes very active. Your body releases more cortisol and adrenaline. Your nervous system switches out of like that rest mode, and your heart rate rises slightly, and your blood vessels tighten just a little to prepare you for waking up. That combination creates that normal morning blood pressure surge. It's not that your body reads it necessarily like a clock, but it knows where you are in your sleep wake cycle, and early morning is when it gears up for that for the day at least. I would say this is also why you see a lot more heart attacks and strokes in the early morning, and why checking your blood pressure first thing in the morning is really important, especially before like any caffeine or medication. It just gives more consistent readings.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say through your circadian rhythm, your body absolutely knows when it's morning, and that's why your blood pressure naturally rises between that 5 to 8 a.m. window.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think my circadian rhythm is like clockwork. I'm up at like 6:30 every single day, and it's that cortisol and adrenaline. I usually wake up before my alarm actually goes off. So, and that's the whole reason why we see that higher reading. But that was an interesting point as well, that, we see more heart attacks and strokes early in the morning. I've never actually thought of that. So thank you for sharing that. Perfect. So it looks like we've come to the end of our questions for this month's episode. We have got one more comment. Sorry, Melody, in advance, I'm blocking you again. I said, D. Henderson, thanks for being very active today. I've read that 45% of women over the age of 20 are living with some form of cardiovascular disease. That is alarming. What do you suggest? That is very alarming, D. I think I haven't read this, but I'd love to look at the source.
Mm-hmm.
I think if anyone is suffering, if it's that high, again, it really does highlight the importance of, having a home blood pressure monitor, kind of making a home blood pressure monitor a normal thing just to have in every single household, just like, we have a thermometer, and just like we have certain things that we have that most people have in their, health box or whatever you want to call it. Having a blood pressure monitor can be very important as well, and monitoring it. You might not need to do it. Of course, you don't need to take your blood pressure every single day, morning and evening, every day, unless you're being told by your provider to do so. Once things are normal and satisfactory, it's completely fine to do it every couple of days, every week, or whatever, just to keep an eye on it. But again, if it's that high, that people, 45% of women over the age of 20 are living with some form of cardiovascular disease, again, it highlights the importance of checking your blood pressure, making that a normal thing, just like we check our weight every couple of weeks and we're making sure, you know, we're doing all right and we're in a healthy range. Maybe start checking our blood pressure more often as well. And I know in the UK, in England, we actually had a big campaign, the NHS did a while ago, in community pharmacies taking, and they still are actually doing this, and it's taking blood pressure readings from patients. I think it's if you're over 30 or 35, so automatically asking them, hey, can I take your blood pressure reading? And, you know, a lot of people have been diagnosed or caught to have actually you've got high blood pressure at quite a young age. So it's definitely one of those that we need to start pushing more and making it a real normal thing to have a blood pressure monitor in your, you know, in your medicines cabinet or wherever you keep all your stuff. Any comments from you, Melody?
Yeah, absolutely. This is why it's super important for patients to come in for their annual physical. So in the US system, the US healthcare system, we encourage anyone above the age of 18 to come in for at least an annual screening just to make sure that they're healthy. We'll usually order blood work, we'll get their vital signs, and that will kind of clue us in if there's something of concern. And if we do see something of concern, such as blood pressure being elevated, we'll tell you the measures that you need to take to ensure that you are actually healthy. So we'll recommend you to go get a blood pressure cuff, and we'll recommend you to take at-home readings on a regular basis so we can review them. Or we'll review your blood work and check to make sure that there's nothing else going on. I've seen cases where there are 20-year-olds who have hypertension and they have it run in their family, like it's a genetic quality. So it can start even as young as in your 20s, but it's just not as common as like later in life as most people. But I think checking in with your doctor at least once a year is super important.
Perfect. Thank you for that. There was another comment, but I can't bring it on screen. I've lost the comment. But it was from Jennifer, and it was something about circadian rhythm, and you know they're happy to learn about the circadian rhythm. So thank you for that one, Melody, for explaining all about the circadian rhythm and everything else. Well, looks like we've come to the end. What I'm going to do, Melody, if it's okay with you, I'm going to end you on here now. We've run out of time on this episode, but thank you again. Thank you so much for coming on this call. It's been so nice having another medical provider on here as well. Hopefully we'll see you on another episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was really fun to be on here.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in and watching the A&D Medical Live YouTube Q&A. If you're watching this after it's gone live, don't worry. We have a new episode every first Thursday of the month. And you can click for notifications and make sure to subscribe so you're aware when the next episode is going live. We have daily health videos on the channel all about blood pressure and cardiovascular health. So definitely give them a watch. And I'll get back to you in next month's episode if you leave a comment afterwards or on any of our videos. And like I said, again, make sure to subscribe. We have daily health videos. And as we always say, A&D Medical, discover precision.